Rachel and welcome to WombTube, and today I am with Rachel Webber of timeandspacetherapies.co.uk, and today we're going to be talking about birth story healing, which is something that Rachel specialises in. So Rachel, hello and welcome.
Hello, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Wonderful name, by the way.
Thank you.
And normally at this point I ask people a bit more about themselves and their professional background, but I thought first of all most people won't know what birth story healing is. So if you could just unpack that a little bit for us and let us know what it is, I think that would be really useful at this point.
No problem. This is for men and women, predominantly, obviously, for women who have had a baby. And it's about actually allowing them to express themselves after the birth. So, about them expressing how it was for them, what emotions have come up for them, if there's any sort of trigger points that have affected them, where they're feeling a little bit of anger or confusion or disappointment, or the expectations haven't been met, instead of having to hold on to all of those emotions without anybody really, excuse me, acknowledging them or kind of validating it for them. This is their opportunity to work via Skype or face to face for them to really explain what's going on for them on an emotional level, so they don't have to drag it around with them effectively.
Okay, so just to make this clear for people, if something's happened during the birth experience, it doesn't have to be that something dramatic happened. It can just be that how they feel about that event, no matter how small it was or how inconsequential, if it's still triggering something in them, that's what you look at with them. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just to give you a really quick example,
Yeah.
one lady came to me and her birth actually went kind of okay. And she was trying to convince herself, this was about a year or more after the birth that she came, and she was thinking about having another baby, but she couldn't quite work out why she was hesitant. And she never actually acknowledged how she felt about everything. So the first session, she literally unpacked the story. She told me the story in her own words. And then we looked at actually any trigger points. And the trigger for her was the consult she'd been pushing for a really long time. The consultant came in to kind of assess and said, push as hard as you can. And then said, push harder than you have before. And it wasn't meant meanly, but this poor woman, her initial reaction, she'd been holding on to this for over a year, was, what do you think? Do you think I've not been trying to push? Do you think I've not been doing this properly? What expectations have you got of me? I can't do it. And actually, that one phrase, push harder than you have before, when she'd already been pushing as hard as she physically could, just destroyed her actually at that point in her labour. And she was holding on to all of that anger and upset, but not appreciating it, not realising that's what was on for her.
Okay, so it's amazing actually that one phrase could have such a huge impact on someone that they may not even realise even a year later.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually because we don't really give ourselves permission to really understand how we're feeling about something, and society doesn't either. They just expect us to move on, get on with it. It was all fine. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
nobody really wants to hear the story. They just want to hear that you're okay and the baby's okay and you're moving on with their life. There's nowhere to go with any of these feelings, so we have to kind of pretend that they're not there.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and actually, I don't know if it's just a British thing about the we hold in all the emotions, but the minute someone gets pregnant, we give her all the battle stories.
Yeah,
Which just seems it's like the opposite of the placebo effect. You're actually going in with the expectation of something going on that's going to happen that's terrible, and then afterwards you kind of think, oh well, it wasn't as bad as what they said happened to them, so I can't feel bad about it myself.
yes, exactly. There's massive comparison, birth comparison going on. It
Yes, that's
wasn't
a
as
really good
bad
word.
as so and so, this happened to her. So I can't feel bad about my birth because it was actually fine. There was just one little tiny moment where somebody said something that they shouldn't have done. And people don't give themselves permission to feel it.
Mm. And usually once you actually go into that, that's when the sort of breakthroughs happen and you can start working through it and moving on.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So just going to go back a step now to your background and how you came into this. Your background is actually birth, isn't it?
Yes, I was a midwife for 15 years and I absolutely loved it. I did it when more focus on effective birth,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't very much recognition even within the system of how the birth actually affects somebody on an emotional level. And there wasn't really very much help or support on that level. It was very focused about the physical health of the mum and the baby. And actually, I wanted to do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have now set up, obviously, this service. It's a private service to actually help people come to terms with their birth experience, process any emotions, and on an energetic level, feel completely clear of it so that they're fully present in their life and fully present with their family, not having to kind of suppress emotions
Yeah.
from the birth experience.
Wow, that sounds like a journey. Um, so if someone is thinking, okay, am I one of these people that perhaps needs to work through this? I appreciate this is more emotional and energetic, but what are kind of like the signs and the symptoms on that level that a woman perhaps needs to look into this a bit more?
Hmm. I think if they've still got memories, because even if they don't feel like traumatic memories, if they're still thinking about the birth, then there's something behind it. There's a meaning behind that and an emotion behind that that might need unpacking. It may be that they're not feeling as much joy around being a mum as they was expecting. Maybe they're comparing their birth to other people's birth. Maybe they're having flashes of anger that they don't really know where's coming from. Or they might be feeling like they don't even want to think about the birth at all. They're kind of numbing themselves to it. So all of those things indicate to me that they're holding on to emotion that hasn't been processed. And ultimately, if we hold on too long, we can become depressed.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, that could be the woman that gave birth, it could be her birth partner, it could be anyone that was involved.
Yes, absolutely. Might even be the doula or the midwife. So anyone involved in that birth.
Okay. So if a woman is recognizing this in her and she's thinking about having a session with you, I know it's probably different from person to person, but what would a session involve and what would it look like?
So I normally actually do 3 sessions because the first session is literally her telling her story. And I think that's really important that she is aware of her story from her, in her own words, from her own perception, because it's not the midwife story or the doula story or the birth partner story. It's how she felt about it. So it's really important she gets that off her chest, and that's the first stage. The second stage is that we would actually look at any trigger points within that story. So any parts of the story which have triggered emotion in her or triggered a memory in her, and we apply energy healing techniques such as emotional freedom technique or NLP type techniques where we actually neutralize that specific emotion, that specific memory, so that actually she's completely free of that experience.
Mm-hmm. Just to give people an idea who are watching this, EFT or emotional freedom technique is also known as tapping, so you might see people tapping.
Yeah.
NLP is neuro linguistic programming.
Yes, exactly. But it's the part of it that I use is the visioning part of it. So we can actually see or feel where the emotion is locked in the body. We can bring it out. We can have virtual conversation either with that emotion or that actually the person behind that emotion, be it the doctor, the midwife, the birth partner, and actually get to the bottom of the meaning.
Mm. Okay, that sounds really fascinating, and I think it sounds like something that so many women need and don't necessarily know is out there at the moment. Um, I remember when I was doing my doula training that a lot of women just don't feel even acknowledged that they've gone through a massive life changing experience, even if it's a really positive birth. I've noticed a lot of women will say, you know, they'll go around, I've got a baby, I've got a baby, and they want someone to acknowledge that they've just been through a huge process and a massive change and something that was really profound for them. And it's, do you think that's something culturally in Britain that we just don't discuss this at all and we expect people to move on? I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. I don't know what happens in other countries, obviously.
Mm,
Bizarrely, I have just written a blog exactly on this subject. Is it just British
okay.
that we don't acknowledge birth? We don't acknowledge the massive physical and emotional event that a woman has just done. We don't even celebrate her.
Exactly.
We just kind of gloss over it and expect her to just pick up literally running and just carry on. And that's whether she's had a cesarean, normal birth, anything.
Mm,
It's like, oh, why are you not driving? Why are you not, getting on with your normal activities? Like, well, actually, I've just had a massive life-changing event. Who's acknowledging this for these women? And I find it really sad. Really sad. It's not right.
I agree 100%. And it always surprises me just from a therapist point of view that a cesarean section, for example, is the only major abdominal surgery where you don't even have any rehab afterwards, and yet you've got another person to look after as well.
Yeah.
If someone was to have that kind of level of surgery elsewhere, without the baby coming out, you would expect them to have a support plan in place, rehabilitation exercises, and all this to support her. And then on top of that, you're giving her the responsibility of a new life to look after.
Yeah, and the tiredness on top of that. There's just, yeah, it's crazy. Not enough recognition for women,
Absolutely.
what they do.
I'd just like to go actually to birth partners,
Yeah,
actually. So
yeah.
I remember someone saying she overheard some men talking in the restaurant or a cafe about watching their partners giving birth and saying what not necessarily traumatic experience it was for them, but it was very difficult for them watching the person that they love most in the world screaming that she's being ripped to shreds inside. And some comments along those lines, and for them it felt like they were witnessing a car crash. Obviously it's not like that at all births, because there are some births that are amazing and really fulfilling for both partners, but for the birth partner, whether it's the husband or even the wife or just a friend who's there stepping in, do you get many of these coming to you, and what sort of emotions when you speak to them do they have that they're not necessarily acknowledging or even telling the mother about?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult for birth partners because they're expected to be the strong ones
Mm,
and they're expected to keep it together, like actually during the birth, even though they've got no experience of what to expect at all and they have no concept of whether it's normal or not normal. They have no way of putting it into context. And then afterwards, they're expected to be the strong ones. They're expected to just keep going, not expected to sort of express their emotions. And you're right, it has a massive impact on people. Men are finding it quite shocking. They're feeling out of control. They were feeling helpless, feeling they couldn't do anything. And all of those feelings sort of getting into
mm, absolutely. So if someone's watching this and they're either someone that's had a birth that's not quite sitting right with them, or they were a birth partner or a doula and watching it, what would be a key message you would say to them at this point in time if they're watching it and they're thinking, this sounds familiar?
I would say to them is actually it's okay to validate their own feelings, first of all, and actually acknowledge how they're feeling is the first step. So not to try and dismiss it, not to try and compare it with someone else and decide it's not that bad, really. To actually say, yeah, this is how I am feeling about this, and that's acceptable to feel it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
the
so
first stage of acknowledging that
yeah,
there's something going on.
exactly. And sometimes I think we don't feel stuff because it's so massive, we think it's going to affect our lives, and we're not sure how we're going to carry on if we actually let those feelings to the surface. So if they can't actually completely acknowledge it themselves, I would say, or get in touch with me or someone similar. It might just be they want to go and speak to their health, speak to a friend, but actually someone who can acknowledge those emotions in them.
Absolutely. And I think as well, if you're a friend who someone's come to you with their story, it's so powerful if you can just listen to them and not try and advise them or interrupt and just let them speak. You're giving them quite a big gift in just letting them acknowledge their story.
Yeah, definitely, and not judge it on any level.
Mm,
That's their story for them, and that's their perspective of it, and that's completely acceptable. Yeah.
absolutely. I'd just like to sort of look at, because I know whenever I do a video about birth and people are talking about experiences, it can almost sound like birth is a negative process and it's something we have to go through, but it's horrible. From your midwife experience, it is completely possible for women to have a wonderful birth, isn't it? Just to reassure them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It does happen. I always like to sort of add that balance in there. And then
It
relate.
does happen, and I meet people actually quite daily nowadays who tell me they had a wonderful birth and they loved it. And I'm like, wow, fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, I do know one or two people that had an amazing birth and they actually feel really guilty because their friends had a terrible one that they go on and on about, and they're feeling guilt and shame about that, which to me is a trigger in them that they need to see you about their birth story.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a shame, isn't it? Well, I think everyone needs to talk about their birth story. I just think if there's any big event in your life, a wedding, a anniversary, anything, we like to talk about it. So what's different about birth, really, whether it was good or bad or somewhere in between?
Yeah,
So yes, these women, they also need their story acknowledged,
they do.
especially if they're feeling shame or guilt about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just really keen to stress that to people. It doesn't matter what the experience was. If you're feeling something afterwards that is making you feel guilty, shamed, or even confused, there are wonderful people like Rachel out there. So if someone does want to come and see you, what's the best place for them to find you online?
Best place is my website.
Mm-hmm.
So that's www.timeandspacetherapies.co.uk.
Wonderful.
And they can have a look on there, get my phone number, ping me an email, and see if I'm the right person for them.
Great. And you do consultations via Skype, don't you?